Test.
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
All right, good afternoon, right? Afternoon, yeah, 12:05. Thanks for sticking around for our second town hall today. I wanted to introduce the leadership team again for those who weren't here 2 weeks ago. So if everyone who's on the leadership team would please stand up. Ralph Corey, Bobby Holland, Ed Hollinsworth, Dusty Gray, Bob Howard. I'm Diana St. John, and of course we all know Clark, Pastor Clark. So we're going to start off with a devotion, and this is one that Bob thought would be very timely for us today, so I'm just going to read, if you don't mind. This is from 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Visiting Israel changed my life, but not in the way you think, a retiring professor said at a ceremony honoring his years of service. Because of terrorist threats, there were few tourists, so I found myself virtually alone on a bus in Jerusalem with a young Palestinian tour guide. Obviously bitter, the guide decided to unload his people's problems on me. The bus turned down a side street. He pointed and said, "That home once belonged to my family. We lived there for many years. We were thrown out and put into a refugee camp. Promises of compensation never materialized. Our family received nothing. They took our land, our homes, our businesses, and even our self-respect. We have been stripped of everything, and no one seems to care." For the first time, the retiring professor said, I realized that the Jews were not the only ones being oppressed. The Palestinian people also have legitimate problems that are crying for recognition. So I spent the last 16 years writing articles explaining the plight of the Palestinian people and urging the necessity of looking at both sides of this difficult situation. After a long pause, the professor continued, I must confess that in this task I have failed completely. I worked hard to deal with a difficult worldwide problem and accomplished nothing. He then said, I believe we are called as Christians for a special task, and we will often be unsuccessful. Therefore, we will become depressed, and depression is the darkness that often accompanies serving God. The retiring professor was depressed, and by the time he finished speaking, we were depressed. We likely will not resolve problems between the Jews and Arabs. When we die, the world will probably be the same dangerous place it is right now. If you think about it, a little depression seems warranted. Maybe it's best to not think about it. We should do our work, raise our family, watch the news, take our vacations, enjoy a few pleasures, and not take any of this other stuff too seriously. Who am I to think that I can impact society? How much can one person do? For generations, others asked the same question, what can I do? 1 John is written for a church once filled to overflowing with enthusiasm, but now becoming discouraged and asking questions about their mission and even about the identity of God. The one who existed from the beginning is the one we have heard and seen. We saw him with our eyes and touched him with our hands. He is Jesus Christ, the Word of life. This one who is life from God was shown to us, and we have seen him. That's 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 through 2. John proclaims God is alive and aware of what is happening. How does he know? We saw him and touched him. If God is alive and still in control, then our lives have purpose and meaning. We are called by God for a mission, if only we truly knew and understood what that mission was. So, thank you, Bob. That's very timely. Makes you think. I know Ralph is going to mention this too, but going along with Pastor Clark's sermon today, what's important? What's important to us individually? What's important to us as a church? What's important to us as a family, a church family? So, things to ponder. I'm going to let Bob come up now and give us an update on the finances that we presented a few weeks ago. And then we will open it up to questions and discussion, and any of the leadership team, if they want to provide some insights after Bob, feel free.
Thank you, Diana. Did everybody get a handout? Okay, good. Okay, good. And if you want the original hard copy, we did email this out and did go out. The original fact sheet, let us know. I have extra copies up here, so just let us know. So thank you all for staying after church. We know that we're standing between you and fried chicken, so but this is really important. And when I read that devotional about that church struggling, it made me think about Baylake. And just candidly, just so you know, started in leadership in 2014 at the church, and I have struggled the last 10 years on the very topics we're talking about. And sometimes I've felt like, oh, where is God? And all of a sudden, I've been enlightened, because I feel like God is challenging us to get outside of the church. We're worried about what's inside the church, but I really believe that God's challenging us to get outside the church and to really start helping others. So at times like this, it makes us really think about our purpose and why are we here, why are we doing this, why do we need money, and those kinds of things. So really, I think that's what God's really trying to do. And we're not alone in this struggle. There are churches across our district, across our state, that are struggling with the same types of issues. And I really think that, God doesn't really care about the building. Yes, the building's important. God cares about the people. He cares about us. And I really think that's why we're here. So again, we thought it was important as a leadership team to have a fact sheet. So if you have questions, you can go back to the fact sheet and find out about the facts. So the first part of this, there's a little bit of a slight typo here, but the first part of this, when we had our meeting on August 25th, a couple weeks ago, we had a deficit at that time of $17,262. At the end of August, we took another, and that number was as of the end of July. At the end of August, we got another financial statement, and guess what? People heard us in that August meeting. We actually had a surplus at the end of August of $9,686. So wow, God does deliver, God does answer. But the challenge of that, as we're projecting forward, we started with the $70,000 projected deficit over 12 months. If you take all those numbers, it's whittled down to, we still have a $41,000 problem on the horizon. And that number doesn't include, I think Ralph presented at the last meeting, the capital that's necessary for the church. We think we need to be spending about $50,000 a year. That number doesn't include that $50,000. Nor does it include part of the reason where we are is because as people die, they no longer give. Pretty logical, right? they're up with God. They don't need any more money. They don't need to give any money to the church. So that happens. So we know that there will be additional areas there. So I did print for you guys the complete August operating financial statement. You should be getting this monthly in your newsletter. This is actually mailed out to you monthly. And I don't want to spend a lot of time, but you see the yellow $9,600. That's where we are at the end of August. That is our operating fund, and we actually have a cash balance in the operating fund of $95,000. The middle column is designated funds. So these are funds where members say, hey, I want my money to go to a specific cause. I want this to go to beach bags. I want this to go to Sudan. I want this to go to whatever that specific cause might be. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So you can see in those designated givings, we had $111,000 given through the end of August. Go to the expense side of that. $55,000 of that went to missions. One of the things that I think is always important is that a church look at its receipts, and we should, as a church, should also be tithing in our receipts. A tithe is 10% of our income. So our total income, if you add the operating fund and the dedicated fund together, is $453,000 through the end of August. We have given to missions, to charities, to causes, $55,000. So we've given more than 10% of our receipts to back as, so we're tithing and doing over and above the tithe as a church, which I think's a good, healthy sign. So the designated funds, we collected $35,000 more than what we've taken in at that point. And our designated balances at the end of August was $104,000, almost $105,000. So that's kind of where we are at the end of August. We just got a financial statement on Friday. In September, we're about the same place as we were at the end of August. So far, so good. Keep doing what we're doing. So then, a lot of people have said, they looked at the budget and they said, we are giving a lot in apportionments. So the apportionments is the amount of money that we give as a church to our district, which is called the Coastal Virginia District. Fortunately or unfortunately, I happen to be the chair of that board. I'm not sure how I got tricked into that position, but I'm on that position. And the reason I have a suit on is our new district superintendent, Beth Givens, is being installed today at 3 o'clock over at Sheraton United Methodist Church on the Eastern Shore. So after this meeting, I'm headed to the Eastern Shore. So that's our Coastal Virginia District, and we give money to the Coastal Virginia. We'll talk about that in a second. We also give money to the Virginia Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. So that's our statewide conference, if you would. So why do we give them money? So if you look, in the Coastal Virginia District, we receive in return resources, workshops, seminars, consulting for our pastor and our lay leadership. We have attended a lot of conferences over the last 10 years provided and put on by our district, and that's where those funds are going to. The VA UMC supports us through, in a broader context, with the annual conference, resources, grants. Beach Bags has received, I think, a grant now for the last 3 or 4 years of about $4,000 or $5,000, so that money came back to us. Training, seminars, and consulting. So what did we commit to? If you flip over the back side of that page, and I tried to keep this to one page, so I apologize. I know it's small. I even had to get out my bifocals to look at this. So what I did here is, this is the top part of this is what we paid to the Virginia Coastal District, and I laid it out for 22, 23, and 24. So you can see that number's been really very consistent, about $7,500. The 2024 column is the right column. We gave $732 to the Board of Missions. That's the entity that supports, and when they foreclose on a church, they also give out grants to churches to help them with things that are going on in their church. So that was the contribution to that. The district fund, $5,700. So that's the money just to run the district itself. Wesley Community Center is over in Portsmouth, so $262 our apportionment went to that. Occohannock on the Bay is a camp. Actually, our church uses our bus to take kids over to the camp at least one time a year. So that's over on the Eastern Shore, and they do all kinds of camps over there. So that was $672. And the Wesley Foundation is the ministry at Old Dominion University. So that's what we gave there, a total of $7,600. Then in the Virginia Coastal District, I'm not going to go down through every one of these numbers, but the conference mission is the sort of the contributions that they give out in the conference. That's $8,000. Conference services, that goes to pay for the overhead, $4,700. The district superintendent fund, that comes back to our district superintendent, $3,200. Equitable compensation, these are all small numbers. But if you look at the big numbers, clergy health and active clergy health and retired clergy health. So $21,000 went to the active clergy health account, and almost $15,000 went to retired clergy. So that's going to pay for the medical benefits for our pastors. So almost half of our money is going that we're paying to the conference is going to pay for medical benefits for our pastors. So if we cut that out, we don't pay that. Clark's going to be out on the street with his little can looking for money to help pay for any kind of medical stuff he has. So we don't want to do that. The Episcopal Fund, these are all world funds, world service, that's all going directly straight to charity. The one thing I want to mention is that the money that we give to Omcor's in here, it's really part of that world service. We're giving that as part of our apportionment so that when you directly donate something to Omcor, like when we have a hurricane and they do relief or there's a disaster in the world, every dollar that you give goes 100% to whatever that issue is because we've paid for the overhead through our apportionment. So we always have overhead, right? So that's a good thing to note. The Black College Fund, $780. The African University, $168. So there you got it. The total that went to the Virginia conference was about $64,000 this year in 24. And if you add those two numbers together, the $7,600 to the Coastal Virginia District and the VA conference, we're spending about $72,000 a year in apportionments. So that's what it is. That's part of being United Methodist. That's part of our connectional piece that, we have Methodist churches all over the state. We have Methodist churches all over our district. We have Methodist churches all over our country. We have Methodist churches all over the world. That's what this money goes to support. And again, primarily it's health benefits, yes.
A question I should have known the answer to, but I noticed that the number changes from 22 to 23 to 24. Is it based on our role? The numbers of members we have?
That's a very good question. It's actually not based on the number of members. Years ago, it used to be based on the number of members. Now it's based on how much money we spend on ourselves. So there's a whole formula that they go into, but basically it's based on our annual expenditures. So a smaller church would pay less, a bigger church would pay more. So we're like in the medium-sized churches, if you would. That's a great question. The other thing I wanted to note is you see how this number went from 81,000 in 2022 down to 71,000 last year and again $72,000 this year. Our 2025 apportionment has not been sent out yet. It's supposed to come out any day. I thought we would have it by now. But we understand that there's going to be a sizable reduction in apportionments for 2025. I heard as much as 33%, which I think is a little bit hard to believe, but I think I've been told it's a sizable reduction. So when we get that number, we'll share that with you, what it is for next year. So that's kind of apportionments and why we do that part of it. That was a really good question that somebody had. Okay, so dedicated funds. We've been talking a little bit about the dedicated funds. Several people ask, why can't we just use dedicated fund money to pay operating expenses? Why can't we just use that money? We have a lot of money sitting there, $114,000. Dedicated giving is when a giver directs their contribution to go to specific cause or need. Dedicated giving is intended to be over and above our commitment. So dedicated money, when we're giving to dedicated causes like that, is intended to be over and above your tithe, if you're tithing, or over and above what you've committed on an annual basis to give to the church. So that's what the dedicated giving is meant to be. Therefore, as an example, we can't take funds from the gift of love, dedicated fund, and pay operating costs, as those that gave to that fund intended for their gift to pay for reception costs associated with their funerals to be held at Baylake. So that's just an example. We can't take money from a dedicated fund and say, hey, we're going to pay the electric bill with that money. We can't do that. Additionally, this is another important note, some dedicated funds are self-sustaining, so they don't need contributions from the church, but it's a dedicated fund. And 3 examples of that is like Upward Soccer. We collect money from the kids playing Upward Soccer, and that goes to pay all the expenses. So the church literally has 0 financial contribution to that dedicated fund, to that cause, if you would. And Upward is actually one of our signature ministries. Scouts, a lot of people say, oh my God, we got all these kids running around here. It must be costing us a lot of money. Scouts are self-sustaining. We don't pay any money to the Scouts. Now, we allow them to sell popcorn, and we allow them to have, when's the dinner, October 20th. The Scouts will be having a luncheon hosting. We have one service that day. They're going to host the luncheon, and of course they take a love offering up for that. Yes, Michelle.
This Scouts contribute in a lot of soft and unseen ways that we can't see. They work in the dark, and they're selfless. So thank you. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Actually, they help in some very seen and hard ways too. With the Christmas tree lot, we really depend on the Scouts to make that happen. So they're one of our signature ministries of the church. They're really, and again, the church, we don't have a line item in our budget that says Scouts. We don't have that. The Christmas tree lot is another one that just Michelle just kind of reminded me of that one. Christmas tree lot. The church doesn't pay anything for the Christmas tree lot. We sell Christmas trees. We take all the proceeds and we give it out to charities and causes within our church and our ministries. So that's kind of dedicated funds. Again, it's really intended to be the money that's over and above your pledge or over and above your tithe.
Bob, I got to do it just once. You're wrong. In the guise of everyone here, in some way, remember, our commitment is through our tithes, our service, and our dedication. I want to make it very clear in this congregation. I need you for Upward. I need you for Scouts. And the men will always need you for selling Christmas trees. So please, please, please understand. We're talking about money right now, but you guys all show up all the time with your service, and we greatly appreciate that.
No, great point, Dusty. Great point. Yeah, this is a money conversation, so don't get it confused with we still need your service and your participation in the church. Okay, Vacation Bible School. I think I mentioned that at the luncheon last week. Somebody said, "Oh my God, we can't have Vacation Bible School anymore because of Baylake Academy." That's not true. That's why we put on the fact sheet. There's a whole week in the lease that we can have Vacation Bible School. And the reason we haven't had Vacation Bible School over the past couple of years is, one, our director of family ministry position has sort of been in and out. We have James now, which we're very happy to have James with us. And if you were at the luncheon last week, James shared that he actually went to another church this year and participated in their Vacation Bible School so he could learn about how you do a Vacation Bible School. And it's our intention next year in 2025 to bring back Vacation Bible School. So just as Dusty said, we're going to need everyone in here to participate in Vacation Bible School because that's the only way we can pull it off. So there, James, I already set you up. You can start asking people and signing them up. Okay, so the last point here is really just change of hearts. Our leadership team, your leadership team at Baylake will continue, ask that you continue to pray about this. Prayer is really the foundation of this. What is God trying to tell us? What should we be doing? We need to pray about it. So we ask that we be number 3 or 4 on your prayer list to go ahead and ask daily and pray about Baylake United Methodist Church and your leadership team and Pastor Clark. Pray about the situation for God's love and guidance during these times as to solutions, outcomes, direction, changes of heart about how we share the incredible abundance that He has given to each of us. How are you using your talents from the parable of the talents, the resources that God has provided? Let us share our love and our abundance.
Thanks, Bob. Are there any questions specific to the finances that Bob just presented?
This really isn't a question, it's more of a suggestion than anything, and I've had several people suggest the same to me, and that is in any entity, whether it be government, church, whatever, when people are contributing money to something, a lot of times they're allowed to come and just see what's going on. City council meetings do it, state legislature, federal government does it. They have a balcony for people to sit in and listen to the leaders of the country. And I think it would help a lot of people if maybe, and we used to do this years and years ago, just put on this when the meeting's going to be and what it's going to cover that night. And let the members who donate to the church come and attend. You know, just sit there and maybe you'll get a good suggestion from somebody. You know, everybody has different thoughts. And I think that way, because me, and I'm a dummy, I've sat here and I've heard things I had no idea I don't even know what they are. You know, and it would be nice if people knew what was going on. You know, everybody gives, let everybody participate. The leadership committee can still make the decisions, all of course, but you know, you might pick up a good idea from somebody too.
Thank you. Just our leadership team meets the second Tuesday of every month. Those meetings are open to anybody that wants to attend unless we have an executive session where it's related to personnel, then we would close it up. Sure.
Thanks, Flynn. And the reason that we took it off the bulletin is because all that training we've gone to, one of the things they've shared with us is don't put it on the bulletin. Share it in other ways, because what happens is when we have visitors, and by the way, today we had 95 people. Out of that 95, 15 were visitors or people that have come several times. So that was part of that training that we've learned. But what we do is it's in the monthly bulletin, and we're happy to, we actually maybe print out some of those things and give them out as opposed to putting them on the bulletin. So there's probably another way to do what you're suggesting. It's a great suggestion. But that's the reason was taken off the bulletin, particularly when we're running a negative balance. It's kind of hard to get new people to say, oh, I'm going to go to this church. They're running a deficit.
Is that training suggestion from an entity that gets money from us?
No. It was all just training. These are people that have studied church, experts in church, and that's part of the training. All the things that we do, like with visitors and stuff, is all stuff that came out of Shift 2.0 training that we've had, which was sponsored by the district. So it's just, we're going to do the same. We're going to do exactly what you're saying. We're just going to do it a different way. I'm sorry.
Actually, I think our church is in a different position now than we were back during shift 2. We've lost, 2 or 3 different ways with people with less. So I think we're more vulnerable, and I think it behooves us to be. I think it behooves us to be transparent, inclusive, responsive, and really buff up our communication. So I totally agree with you. I don't know about, thank you so much.
A lot of the problems, financial problems that this church is facing has to do with the plant. And I'm talking about the furnace, the air conditioning, the roof. The time that I spent as trustee, the money that we laid out for these kinds of expenses is staggering. Part of it has to do with the fact that funds were not properly allocated in the past to deal with these issues. So my question is, how now are we allocating the funds needed for this operation of the plant?
Well, Bob, the answer is actually simple. We don't really have the funds. We're not paying the operating bills, so we don't have the funds. The only way to get the funds is by increased giving from our current congregation and to bring new people into the church. So, and all that financial stuff that we presented shows that we have the deficit without putting the $50,000 away per year, and the church hasn't put it away in the past because we are just covering operating expenses. So that's really the crux. I'm going to bring this over to Dusty. That's really the crux of the issue, is that we don't have enough members to support the physical plant.
Let me just also clarify, we are certainly aware of the problems. That's why this year we commissioned a reserve capital study which lays out a plan for us, for the church, over the next 30-some years to figure out, take a look at all of our equipment here, what its useful lifespan happens to be, when that useful lifespan will expire, how much the costs are expected to be to replace that infrastructure, and then build out a financial plan for the church over the next 2 or 3 decades. And as I think Bob has mentioned, the recommendation is that the church needs to set aside approximately $50,000 a year simply to cover those expenses that are expected to occur over time. And as I'm sure you've probably noticed, fortunately, we have fixed most of the leaks in the ceiling, but we have an air conditioning system that has a mind of its own sometimes when it decides to work or not work. We have other significant costs that are going to come to this church. And as I'm sure you're probably aware, none of this is cheap. These are tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars that the church is going to be facing over the next 5 to 10 years especially. So it's not that there's not a plan. We have a plan. What we need is the money.
All right. So here's the one thing I'm gonna say, because Bob, you speak very well. Ralph, you are amazing, and I got to tell you, the last year and a half, I've watched everything that you've done and let me make sure everybody understand this. One, if you think we haven't had discussions with Baylake Academy to investigate processes and everything else, we do. But we also have to tell ourselves in a very real way that we are Christians, and we can discuss with them in Christian love, not give up because of Christian love, but discuss with Christian love. We've worked on that. And I will tell you, Bob is amazing at reminding us on that endeavor. And Ralph, I'm going to tell you, he has a lot more compassion with them than I ever would. In fact, I may be blocked from speaking with them from time to time. But here's what I will tell you. I've been on the board now for onwards of 7 years. I know nobody realizes I'm on the board, but because I do all the other things, I never talk about what the board does. But here's what I'm going to tell you. First off, I want to make sure everybody understands this. If you were to come to a meeting, you would be welcome. The only time we have to, by our own requirements, is when we go to executive session to talk about staff. That's the one time we actually have to ask people to leave. Every other time, and I'm going to tell you this: if you want to be part of the leadership team, we definitely want you to be part of the leadership team, because some of our members have been on for 3, 5, 7, I think one might be 10 years, because we are in a state where we care about you. We care about this church. We believe that this is one of the tenets where we are good at and are supposed to support God's discipleship from, every single one of us. And we want you guys to be there. We want to tell you guys everything. If you want to ask us questions, we're not trying to hide anything. You may come up and ask us a question where we say, we don't know, because we don't know everything. But we can probably try to get you that information. But what we as a team wanted to do here, we don't want to throw like, oh my gosh, we're in a catastrophe. Here's the thing. Tornado hit my house. I now know that it takes more to build into an existing house than it does to just build the foundation back up from scratch. And when I'm talking $500 a square foot cost, it isn't any cheaper for a church. For example, if I were to tell you that the water heater that we're going to have to replace in the kitchen, you're thinking, oh, that's a $500, $600 water heater. No, it's a commercial grade water heater. It is, add another zero. Just add another zero. The ventilation. How many times did, if you remember 4 years ago, we had such an issue with the ventilation and everything else that was going on. And that was you. You did all of that. So I just want to say, we're not trying to hide anything. In fact, oftentimes I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off because I'm going from one tasker to another tasker to another tasker. But please ask us. We care about what you guys, because you guys are our family. Everyone here is our family. And everyone out there, if we're videotaping this, is our family. And we very much want to make sure we talk to you guys about issues that were coming. So yes, please pray, because we don't want to not do the maintenance when it's done, because as you know, if you start hearing a tick, tick, tick in your engine motor, you can fix that for a couple $100. You start hearing a bang, bang, bang in your engine and your motor, again, what do? Add a 0. So Bob, thank you very much for everything that you said, and I'm going to shut up now.
No, yeah, it may scare you, but it doesn't them. No, I have to say, Ralph and I were members of this church in the late 80s, and it made such an incredible impression on us that we wanted to come back. And there wasn't a Sunday that we visited that someone didn't reach out and greet us and welcome us and encourage us to be part of the congregation. And I think one of the most optimistic things that I heard today was Bob saying that there were 15, did you say? 15 visitors. And I think my minuscule suggestion to this semi-crisis is I think that name tags every Sunday for every person would be so valuable, so that each and every one of you who reaches out to someone who is new, they can greet you in name and by name when you reach out to them, and it really does make a difference. And I think that as we are focusing our prayer, having to do with what Clark said today, it may not be a huge effort, but it is something each and every one of us can do, and that this church and this congregation are particularly skilled at. So I hope that we can remember that as we reach out and worship together.
Thank you for being here.
We want to.
Along those lines, Joy, we joined the church in 1968, and I remember we had about 5 minutes during the early part of the service that we would meet our visitors, and we knew, we could get names, and I think that was one of the most rewarding things, because they remembered that. And now today, we had visitors, but by the time I could get there, they were gone. So that 5 minutes, you could introduce yourself and find out who they are and invite them back. And it does make a big difference.
Can't let Joy have the last word. No, I do, I want to follow on sort of from today's sermon, and Clark's talking about us thinking about what is important to us. And I want to pose a challenge to each and every one of you here that we sort of turn that to let us know, let the leadership team know what is important to you for the church. What makes the church important to you? What does the church need to be in the future? There is nothing that's harder in the world when you're planning, when the leadership team gets together and you're talking about something and you're staring at a blank sheet of paper. That is the hardest thing to try and pull something together. So what I would challenge you to do is spend some time this week thinking about that. Where do you want the church to go? And any suggestions on how you're going to be able to get us there, it would be welcome. But write it down on a sticky note. Write it down on a piece of paper. Drop it off at the church office. Stick it on the office door if it's closed. Send an email through Realm or wherever, just so that we know. Talk to any one of us. Bring it to church next Sunday. Just so we get a sense of a direction and ideas from you folks as to where we want this church to go and how we want to be able to get there.
Thank you. At our last leadership team meeting, we did throw out the idea of having some members of the team be available either between services or after service so that we are more available for that communication piece. So as that gets ironed out, we'll let you know when and where we will be, but that would be another opportunity. If you can't come to the Tuesday meeting during the month, you can't get up to the church during the week, then we would be available to hear your voice on a Sunday.
Can I ask a question? I think that had been brought up before, the greeting period. What are your thoughts on that? You all talked about it. I know this is the second time they've raised it in 2 meetings. Thank you.
So you have brought up 2 suggestions. What's called passing the peace, where we talk to visitors at some point during the service, and the second one was the name tags. So people who have studied churches and visitors will tell you, don't do either of those. The name tag, the guest feels that they are being cornered out. The passing the peace is an awkward moment for a lot of visitors. I believe the reason that we're getting the visitors that we're getting is because we implemented the training that we got, which we don't do those things. But we do have people that greet them. We have a package. Sometimes you'll see me. If you'll see me around a visitor, we give them a package of information. And we also get their name, their email address, and their phone number during that time. And during the week, Pastor Clark and I reach out to those people. And that training, candidly, we started that in 2017 or so, something like that. That's the reason we're getting the visitors. I firmly believe that. It's the things that we've learned and the things that we've implemented as your leadership team. And this church is a friendly church. What I encourage you to do, you all know who the members are. You all know each other. You can pick out a visitor like that. I see Michelle all the time. She's like fly. Yeah, boom, she's on visitor. I see other people. Yeah, I see that you guys are doing that. Just keep doing that, because we had a family that came a little bit late. We took their 2 kids upstairs with the kids. They got a package when they left. They said they're coming back next week for the 9 o'clock service because they asked me, "Do you have another service?" And I said, "Yeah, we have a modern service." I call it modern, not contemporary, but I call it a modern service, and they're going to come back next week for that. So the things we're doing are working. That's why we had 15 people here this week. So our old way, sometimes we want to fall into that and traditional, but that's why we change some of those things up. That's what works. So don't stop giving suggestions, I'm not saying, and don't feel like I threw water in the fire, because I'm not one to throw water in the fire. I want to throw gasoline in the fire and make us really start to go and grow. You reaching out when you see those people will make all the difference, all the world of difference in how they feel. And everybody that comes and visits, Mary Domowitz, who was here at the last meeting, she's a visitor. She stayed afterwards because she's interested in joining this church, and she wanted to hear what we were talking about. She'll be back. So we just need to keep doing the things and stay to the plan that we have, but don't stop giving suggestions. They're not bad suggestions. We've just learned a new way of slicing up the apple. So, do you want to add
I have a question.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So when y'all went to the training that you're mentioning, did y'all learn that you should not be passing that collection plate now?
That was something we didn't learn in training.
Well, I know we stopped during COVID years, but I'm kind of surprised that it's not been brought back.
That's a good comment on whether you want to talk about it. We pulled that out, candidly, we pulled that out of the service to try to keep our service to a time that that people would accept. I believe the mind can only take what the butt can endure. So, if you have service that starts to go over an hour, it starts to become a little bit problematic. So we did take that out of the service. Pastor Clark, we still do have the moment of talking about tithing and giving. And Pastor Clark mentions about the plate. We talk about online people to encourage them to go to the website. And it's really, just so you know, anything about the church service, Pastor Clark calls all the shots at the end of the day. He takes suggestions, but at the end of the day, he's the one that calls all the shots. During that time, we used to have music. You could maybe have the anthem during that time. There's other ways to approach that. But if that's something, the other part that we learned in some of the training, one of the things we did learn in the training, a lot of people are giving online. So when you pass the plate, the training would tell us, and the research would tell us, that some people feel awkward. They gave online, they're not putting anything in the plate, and they're looking around. The story I love, by the way, is... maybe they'll give twice, I don't know. The story I love, by the way, did you ever see, I've never seen this before, but somebody recently told me this story, that they passed the plate, and the guy took change out of the plate and put something else in the plate. Did you ever hear that, Pastor Clark? I don't know. But that's one way to get change right out of the plate. So anyway.
Hey, Bob, I had a guy that used to work for me, and he said at his church that at his church, the minister actually took the felt out of the bottom of the plate because he didn't want anything but bills in the plate. If he dropped change in, everybody could hear it.
Yeah, Carol, we took it out for timing and also because we have 30 people that view our service every Sunday, average every Sunday 30, and it's kind of dead time for them watching us pass the plate. And it is part of it, if you don't have something to give in, because I do all mine through the bank. So it was initially because of COVID and timing to try to keep the service smaller. I mean, we could go back to that, as we can. I don't know.
I understand now that you explained it,
Yeah. So that's one.
I think when we were all raised up in the church,
Yep.
we learned at a very early age to, drop something
In the plate, put something in the plate, and that's when you had the offering, the offertory, and the what's the thing when you take doxology, when you take it up to the front and present it to God. So all that's great. We just taken it out because of that. Michelle.
Maybe we could do it while we're doing something else, just like you said. And maybe there could be some poker chips out there. If people get online, they can grab a poker chip. And then when the plate comes around, they could put that in. And that way they've got something to put in and people can see, oh, this is robust. I need to do this. Just an idea.
Well, we did just have, from last week and this week, we pretty much, I think it went pretty well. I mean, I don't know if we want to mess with success. I mean, we asked, people gave, and we're in a better spot than we were last week. So we might be on the right track. Great ideas, but I think everybody remembers how they were in church. I do too. I remember, but a lot of people that are coming into the church that we want to be members, they didn't have the same experiences we have. So times change. There's you couldn't give with a credit card back when I was a kid. You had to put money in a plate. Now you can give with a credit card or via Venmo or all kinds of different ways you can give to the church. So times are changing, so we just got to keep up with it. So
thanks, Bobby.
Jan, I don't think you were in here when we introduced the leadership team. So Jan Taylor is also part of the team too, as another contact person. Yeah, it was, right. When we met in August, and we had received 2 resumes for the choir position, 2 very qualified.
We didn't even publish it. The job description
Right.
never was sent out.
Because of the financial concerns that we had at the time, and we didn't know whether we would be able to fund the position, at least at that moment. But we received unsolicited 2 very qualified resumes. And the leadership team at that meeting decided it was important enough and funded to pay for that position. And that's how we now have David Prescott, who is doing an amazing job.
I'll say it this way. Don't worry about it. It wasn't, when we said funded, it was not from church funds.
No, the individual leadership team members stepped up
We make it very clear.
above and beyond what their pledge was.
Yes, they did.
And we have a bigger choir now.
Choir sounded really nice this morning, yes.
So Ed Hollinsworth, I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. I'm also Assistant Treasurer of the church. And to follow on the last comment, one of the pieces of information we gave at the last town hall, I think kind of bears on this a little bit. While individual members of the leadership committee felt it was absolutely an imperative to have a choir director, and were willing to make very substantial personal donations, in order to address the current financial situation that Bob so clearly described, I think the request to consider for all donations for all members of the church is not quite so demanding in order to keep us afloat. In fact, if you consider that we have 230 members of the church, if you do the simple math, if each person considers just a small increase in their donations, especially those that are currently not donating anything, it wouldn't actually take that much of an effort to completely eliminate the $40,000 projected deficit in the operating budget, and maybe even make some progress into the additional obligation to fund for capital replacement costs. If people who are not currently donating could simply begin to donate a little bit, and by a little bit I don't mean $100 a month. I mean, if you do the math and across all of the members of the church, all it would really take to correct most of that, or almost all of it, certainly all the operating deficit, would be if people would agree to, for example, just give up a single, Starbucks coffee once a week, which normally costs around $6. Well, what a sacrifice that is, right? If you do that over 52 weeks times 230 people, that is far more than $40,000 of the deficit. So I'm trying to put this into perspective. When we say we have a financial quote-unquote crisis, I don't actually agree it's a crisis. It's a challenge. It's a problem. It's one that we as a congregation, I think, are certainly capable of addressing. Living where we are here, certainly if you're just, living paycheck to paycheck and you can barely provide for your family, you don't need to worry about what I'm asking. But for those of you who can, give up one Starbucks coffee a week, or the equivalent, maybe a pack of cigarettes, it's about the same, $5 or $6 a week. It's going to be enough to get this church into the black, and it's not a huge ask. So if you put it that way, we're not really facing a crisis. What we need is to remember, the eternal words of Dolly from the Broadway hit, who said, "The difference between having no money and a little bit of money is great, but the difference between having a little bit of money and a lot of money is very small." And I think that applies to our church budget as well. So I just wanted to throw that out.
said. Any other thoughts? Everybody's stomach's grumbling, right? Growling. Okay, so what did we learn today? We learned we're in a better situation than we were a month ago. Praise God. We're all going to pray. We're all going to think about what's important for us individually, what's important for us as a church family, and we're all going to communicate with each other. Okay. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. I think I heard that this morning. All right, well, thank you all for staying around, for offering your suggestions, for making your voice be heard, and we're listening, and we're here to listen. That'd be awesome. Thank you, Clark.
Let's pray. Lord, we're just so thankful for Baylake United Methodist Church and for all the members and all the history we have here. We heard some of it today, Lord, that we know so many people have contributed to this church. And we know, Lord, that you're with us, and we're going to continue to pray. We just thank you for the people who have already stepped up to help us through this time. As Ed says, it doesn't take a whole lot to cover what we need. We know that all things are possible through you. We're thankful for all the blessings. Just bless each one of us, Lord, and all our family and friends. Bless our church, and just help us to continue to be your hands and feet, to share your love in the world, to bring more people, as we had visitors today, to know about a God who loves all people and wants a relationship with all people. Bless us now, Lord. In Christ's name we pray. And all God's people say, amen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.